Yeah, good evening, everyone. I'm sharing my screen. I hope my screen share is visible. Can anyone quickly confirm?
Yes, Kiran.
Yeah. So yesterday we are talking about client and server architecture. I'll do a quick recap. Client is any application or a device that submits a request. Server is any application or a device that receives client request to process it after analyzing the request and then giving back a response to client. And whatever response you get from server, it can be in HTML format or text format or JSON or YAML or XML. Excuse me. And any request that is submitted by client to the server will have a protocol associated. And in API testing, we mostly deal with two types of protocols: HTTP, which is an unsecured protocol, or we deal with HTTPS, which is a secured protocol by design. Within HTTPS, we discussed about SSL, secure sockets layer, which is outdated, and TLS protocol, transport layer security. SSL and TLS are cryptographic protocols that will convert plain text into encrypted text, and hence HTTPS protocol is secure. Within TLS, we have version 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So today 1.3 is latest, that is recommended to be used by the developers, and the remaining three versions 1.0, 1.1, 1.2 are outdated. We should not encourage our developers to use those versions of TLS protocols, and that is the test cases we have written yesterday. And every request that client sends will have an HTTP method associated, such as get, post, put, patch, delete. Get is used to get the data from the database. Post method is used to create data in the database. Put and patch are used for updating data in the database, and delete is used for deleting the data in the database. We also call all these things as CRUD operations testing. Okay, that's a quick recap we have done. Before I continue, do you have any questions about what we discussed yesterday? You can unmute and let me know, or you can post it on the chat if you still have a question. Okay, I'll assume no questions. Thank you. Now, the client is sending the API request, which has a protocol, which has a HTTP method. The last thing that a client also sends to the server is called request headers. Something very important during our API testing. In any tool, this is important. So what are request headers? So let me put it in my rough notes here. So clients sends something called request headers. So coming to the definition of request header, I will say it is the additional metadata sent by client to the server. So it is the additional metadata sent by the client to the server along with the client request. Let's try to understand what is this additional metadata. It can be any additional information that client wanted to send. So if I take a simple example, let's break from technology terms. Let's talk about regular life example. Let's say Kiran goes to the bank, and Kiran tells the bank manager that, hey, I would like to have a home loan worth 1 crore from your bank. That is my request to the bank manager, right? Getting a loan of 1 crore for home loan is my request. The moment I say I need 1 crore loan, do you think the bank manager will say, okay, Kiran approved? No, it won't happen. He won't even say, okay, Kiran rejected. It won't happen. Before, along with the request, which is 1 crore home loan, I have to provide additional details like additional details like in which company I'm working, what is my salary, what are the savings I have, do I already have any existing loans where I'm paying some EMIs, do I have the cash flow with me which I can pay for the EMI for 1 crore home loan, I have to answer all these questions to the bank manager. They are nothing but the additional information I'm giving along with the request of home loan. Only then bank manager says, okay, Kiran, I understand that you're working for IBM. Your salary is, let's say, 50 lakhs per month, per annum, and you have a savings of 30 lakhs in your banking account. No EMIs you have. Okay, that makes you deserve for 1 crore home loan. So I might try to approve your loan. So when I provide those additional information, only my home loan gets approved. So that additional metadata, whatever I'm providing to bank manager, is called request headers. Now let's talk little technology wise. So when the client is sending a request, the request can be anything, right? Like Amazon.in or Flipkart.com or Gmail.com, anything, right? For those kind of requests, what type of request headers the browser will send or the client will send or Postman tool will send? I will write a few of them and I'll explain them. So you have something called connection, then user agent, then you have content to type, then you have accept, then you have authorization, then you have accept language, and etc. I will say. Okay, there are so many that are there. Let me try to help you. Connection header will tell whether client and server are actually connected to each other or not before sending the request. If I need a home loan, I should first go to the bank. Then only the connection is established between Kiran and the bank manager. If I sit at my home, how can I send a request to bank manager? On the phone, I cannot make a request, right? I have to go there. Similarly, the client and server should be connected with each other before the request goes from client to server. So whether the client and server are connected with each other or disconnected with each other, that is told by this header. So it can have two values. One is keep alive, the other is close. If the value of connection header is keep alive, it means client and server are connected with each other. Hence, the request can travel from client to server. If the value of connection is close, it means client and server are disconnected. So the request cannot go to server. Okay, that is the meaning of connection header. Then you have user agent header. User agent header will tell the location from where the request is going, or that more details about the origin, like from which browser the request is going, what is the version of that browser, from which operating system the request is going, what is the version of that operating system, what is the IP address of the client from where the request is sent. All these details are present in user agent. So you will have browser name, version. Similarly, operating system name and version. All these details are captured and present as the value for user agent. So user agent is like a spy detective. It will tell the server that this request amazon.in came from Chrome browser whose version is 120 and the request came from Windows operating system, version of operating system is 11. That information is present in user agent, which is one of the request headers. Where do you stay? If I say that I'm staying in Delhi, but the bank is in Hyderabad, the bank will never approve my loan, right? It has to figure out that the bank location and my location are in the same city and almost in the same area. That's nothing but user agent. Am I clear to everyone on what is connection and user agent? Can I have a confirmation, guys? Am I clear? Yes or no?
Yes, Kiran. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next header that we will talk about is content type. Content type means what type of content client is sending to server. Okay. From client to server, what type of data is going from client to server? Let us say, if I have to help you understand, let's say I will say to Karthik that Karthik, I have transferred you, Karthik, I have given your money. So in what way I have given the money? Have I given him in cash or check or deposited in his bank account? or have I done a UPI payment? If it is UPI payment, is it Google Pay or Phone Pay or Paytm Pay or WhatsApp Pay or Amazon Pay or Cred Pay? Or is it a post-dated check I have given? Or it could be anything else, right? So multiple ways are there when I talk about I am giving you money. Similarly, here also we are talking about content type, meaning in which format the data is going from client to server, right? Whatever data you supply from the browser to the server, like when you're logging in, you are providing username and password. You are typing it in normal text format only, like kiran@gmail.com, password is Kiran. You click on login. You entered in text format, but after you click on login, how is that content going from client to server? That is decided by content type. Okay. So I will say example of content type can be your data from client to server can go in JSON format, XML format, HTML format, text format, YAML format, etc. In any format, the data can go from client to server, and your developer will decide whether it is going in JSON or XML or this. So let me show you one example to understand it better. So I will say, let me take one simple example. Okay, let's say this application I'm taking, and I would like to supply my username and password. I can type any wrong username and password also. Let's say guest password also guest. I have typed it in normal plain text format. When I click on login, I got an error. That's okay, does not matter. But this username and password went all the way from the browser to the server, in which format this username and password went to server. That is decided in content type. How will I find the content type? If you right click on the browser anywhere and click on inspect and go to the network tab, here you will see the entire network calls. Whatever you are doing on the browser, the detail of that API call you will see here. So on the network tab I am present, and here in the sub menu choose all button, click on login button, and you see some call came here, generate token. I'll just click on it, and here you see these things: headers, payload, preview, response. So in the response, it said user authorization failed. That is nothing but invalid username password. And in the payload, you can see what is the username and password I have typed. I'm seeing it, guest and guest. In the headers tab, if you go to request headers, you will see content type. See, the value is application/JSON, meaning whatever content I typed, nothing but the username and password, when it is going to server, the browser is transferring it in which format? JSON format. It is going in JSON format. That is what I mean by content type here. The type of content client is sending to server is called as content type. Is that clear to everyone, or there is any question?
Yeah, Kiran, I have a question here. Hello.
Yes.
Will the server can have a different content type and the client can receive a different content type uh, based on the API?
Okay, content type is not individual to client or individual to server. It is always between client to server or server to client.
So always it would be the same content type, right? Same format.
You mean from client to server and server to client?
Both.
99% it will be same.
Okay.
So are there any chances like from client to server it is JSON and from server to client it's maybe in XML or some other content?
Yeah, possibilities are there. End of the day, the developer is controlling that process. So it is very much possible, but developers typically avoid that process. If you're sending in XML format, a response will come in XML. If you're sending the data in JSON, you will get the response in JSON. That's how the developers will try to achieve it. In
Mhm.
exceptional situations, what you said is also probably possible.
But still, we are gonna get the results, correct? Even though the content
Yes,
is in different languages.
correct. Just like this, right? Let's say now you're asking me a question in English.
Yeah.
There is no rule that I have to answer in English. I can answer you in Hindi.
Yes.
But
Okay.
but but still you will comprehend it because you understand that Hindi. Let's say next time you speak in Hindi, I'll talk to you in Telugu. Maybe if you understand it, yeah, the problem is solved. You had a question in Hindi, I gave an answer in Telugu. Anything can happen, right? There is no rule that if you are speaking in English, I have to speak in English. Similarly, if the client is sending in JSON, server has to speak in JSON only to make it easy. But sometimes server will say, for some reasons, I have to give you a response in XML. Why? Because developer developed it like that because of project requirement.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Then we have accept header. Accept header is little opposite to content type, meaning this talks about in which format the data is coming from server to client. Okay. Otherwise, I will say this in another way, saying, client is telling the server that it will accept the response type in the format written here. So something like this. Let's say, I'll say Sunil. Sunil says, "Hey Kiran, what is this Postman tool?" So you spoke in English, and you know that Kiran has the habit of suddenly speaking in Hindi. And Sunil says that I don't understand Hindi. So Sunil says, Kiran, what is this Postman tool? And please answer it in English only. So you told me what is your acceptance criteria. You said what is Postman tool? That is content type, and you're speaking in English. Immediately you said that please answer back in English only because you know if Kiran speaks in Hindi, you may not understand it. So you told your acceptance criteria. So you're telling the server in which format you are expecting the response. Okay. So again, it has to be one of these things and this is what the questions that you both asked me. If content type is JSON, mostly accept also will be JSON. If content type is XML, accept also mostly will be in XML only. Okay, I'll repeat the definition. Content type is in which format the data is going from client to server. Accept will define in which format server should give response to client. And in my example here, you are able to see accept also here. See, application JSON, content type also application JSON for this login request I tried. So server is saying that whatever response I'm giving to you, it will be in JSON format. And what is the proof? If you come to preview or response, tell me, is this in JSON format or some other format? It's in JSON, right? Key and value pair. And that is what accept told, that response should come in JSON. Hence the response is in JSON. Similarly, in the headers, you see content type should be in JSON, meaning whatever data I'm sending to server, it should be in JSON. How do I prove it? If you come to payload is nothing but the user data that you are supplying. Whatever input you are typing, it is called payload. If you come to payload, you see here the username and password is submitted in JSON format only. Click on view source and you will see. Isn't this in JSON format? Key value, comma, key value. So that is about accept header.
So
Is
Kiran,
that
just a question here. Hello.
yes?
So
Yeah.
here on the payload, you see a password not in the encrypted format. Is that secure?
Okay, this one you mean?
Yeah, the password.
Yeah.
So will it be same
Observation.
for any? So will
Mhm.
it be same for even the banking applications? If I log in with a net banking, even the password can be seen here.
Okay, banking applications you may not be able to see, but you can give it a try here. I'll tell you here. That's a whatever point you said is very valid, and it is related to security of your
Yeah,
data while it
of
is
course.
getting transferred.
Because I
So
tried now with another application and I'm able to see the password. It is not in the
yeah,
encrypted format.
yeah. So typically, what happens is when the data is going to server over the TCP layer, IP layer, that's when the data gets encrypted. Okay, over the air, it is encrypted. what you are seeing right now on my screen is not over the air. It is telling me that whatever you entered here, I'm showing it here. That is what the browser is teaching Kiran now, saying, okay, Kiran, this is the username you typed and this is the password you typed. And while it is going to server, it is obviously encrypted and then sent to server because they're using HTTPS protocol. It is 100% encrypted. But if you say, why am I not seeing encrypted password here? Then the answer is the developer did a very weak, poor development where he did not print the encrypted word here. Ideally, the password should not be visible even at this location. It should be in encrypted format here also. But few applications ignore it. They say, since you are seeing the password in your own browser, it's okay. Okay, but that's something incorrect. I don't agree with it. It's a bug that I generally raise when I'm doing security testing. I hope your question is answered.
Yes, clear. Yeah.
Okay, so accept header is also clear, I guess. Then we have accept language. Accept language is like, see, when you are logging in, you got an error. In which language this error is there? English. And what is this message? Login to bookstore, English. Welcome is also English. Login is also English. Meaning the entire website is in English. And why in English? So certain applications can be displayed in any language. So if I go to this application, cisco.com, I can display the content of this page in several languages. If you see on the top right, I have English United States, and if I click on this globe icon, I can choose the language in which I want the website to display. I can choose it in Indian based English language or Japanese language, Chinese language, any other language I can choose here, and the content will change here. That is called as accept language. So accept language means you are telling the server that in which format the response from server should come to client and in which language it should come. Server can say, okay, Kiran, you gave me a request cisco.com, so I'm giving you the response in Chinese language. So Kiran says, no, I wanted the response to be in English. So that is decided in accept language. So if you look at our previous example, under headers, request to headers, okay, this project does not have accept language, but if I type cisco.com here only, see, accept language is there. And what is the value? English United States, because the website is displayed in English. Now let's change the language, okay? Let's change it to Brazil Portuguese. And you see here the language got changed. So somewhere here also we should see that language change reflected. But which call we have to see? Let me change the language one more time. Let me change it to Japanese language, okay? So somewhere here they will change it. I'm seeing again English only here, though the language got changed. Okay, ideally here the accept language will change. In which language it is getting displayed. Maybe I will try google.com. Right now google.com is in English. I'll click on Telugu. And let me search for API. Okay, here typically it gets changed in which language the data is coming. Okay, so that's about the accept language, meaning in which format, in which international language the response should be displayed. That is controlled by accept language. Then you have authorization. This typically contains the username and password details, or the bearer access token, or the API key details. All the credentials is what you will have here as part of one of the request headers. Okay, so these are the additional request headers that client sends to the server.
Hi, Kiran. So for authorization, will you explain in detail later on, or shall we ask questions here now?
I will definitely explain later on, but feel free to
Okay.
ask the questions now as well.
So just want to get more detail about authorization, how the credentials are working over there, what type of credentials can we use over there, all that. So if it will be covered later in detail, then it's fine.
Yeah, later definitely I have to cover. Otherwise, we cannot test APIs.
Okay, that's fine.
But let me talk at a high level now. Let me talk at a high level. See,
Mhm.
authorization means, see, there are hundreds of algorithms available on the internet to authorize a user into the application. And the common thing that you and I use in Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook is what? What do? You enter a username and you enter a password. That is called as basic authorization. So in basic authorization, we enter a username and password. That is one algorithm to authorize yourself. And there is another authorization called digest authorization, meaning another algorithm. In digest authorization, the user enters a username, he also enters a password, plus he also enters something else. That something else will have a different name in different projects, meaning there are three things that you have to enter. That third thing could be a one-time password. The third thing could be a secret code that your developer has told that you have to enter, or a RSA number that your banking device provides you. Anything, it can be anything. So in digest authorization, you have three things to enter to authorize yourself and log into the application. In basic authorization, you have to enter only username and password. Then you have another algorithm called bearer access token. So in bearer access token, you don't have to enter any username and password. This access token typically is a 8-digit or a 16-digit or probably a 4-5 digit. It can be alphanumeric also. That is like a combination of username and password. So it can be any digit. Usually people say it can be a 6 or 8 or 16 digit alpha numeric key. Okay. So here we don't enter the username and the password. Developer will say, okay, this is the code, this is the access token you have to enter to log into the application. It can be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. So this will let you log into the application. Then you have other algorithms like API key, which is also similar to access token. It will also be like a 6 or 8 or 16 digit. This is like another code you have. The algorithm here is API key, meaning you have to enter a secret code and then the API request will be executed. Then apart from this, you have OAuth 1 authentication. Then you have OAuth 2 authentication. OAuth 1, OAuth 2, they all work in the concept of bearer access token only. But today, this authentication is very much famous. Then you have JSON Web Tokens authentication, JWT tokens, JSON Web Tokens authentication. This is another algorithm that developers are using these days to authorize the users into the server. Okay, there are multiple ways like this. If it is a little confusing, I'll give a simple example. Let's say we are all watching a movie. We are planning to watch a movie. Okay. What is that you should have to enter the movie theater?
Ticket.
Ticket. So 5 years back, how was the movie ticket? Like in what format the movie ticket is?
Paper format.
Paper. Very good. Let us say that paper format is basic authorization. So if you provide those paper tickets, you are authorized to enter the movie theater, watch the movie. Done. Today, in which format your movie ticket is?
Digital.
Digital, meaning you will have a screenshot of it taken from your mobile app for your Book My Show. If you show the screenshot, you are allowed to enter the theater premises and watch the movie. Think of it like digest authorization, meaning another way of letting you inside the theater. What is another format when I say digital? If I show SMS also, they will allow me inside the theater, because inside the SMS also it says this is the unique ID, these are the seats he has booked, this is the money he has paid. Think of that SMS as a bearer access token. So SMS is also like a ticket only in another format. If not SMS, these days I am getting a WhatsApp message directly from the theater or directly from Book My Show app. Think of it like an API key. So whether it is an SMS or a WhatsApp message or an email or a screenshot or a paper ticket, they are all authorization ways for you to get into the theater. Okay. But depending on your convenience, you will decide which one. If my intention is to watch a movie on the fly without any preparation and I'm already on the road, I go to the nearest theater which is visible to me, stand in the line, go to the box office, purchase a paper ticket. If I'm a planned guy, I buy it on Book My Show, get a WhatsApp message or an SMS message or an email or take a screenshot of my booking screen and then go and watch the movie. It is my choice how I wanted tickets. Similarly, it is developer's choice, customer choice, what authorization they wanted to follow. Just that every authorization has a different algorithm used, different concepts, but all of them are one and the same in terms of letting the user access the API request and response from the server. Now, which are being used most in the market? I will say basic authorization is used, bearer access token is used, and OAuth 2 is used. These are the latest ones, I mean, mostly used ones, I will say. Any questions with regards to authorization?
So once we get the authorization header, so it will be consistent across all the calls that we are making in that project, right?
Yeah, sorry, say that again.
So once we get this authorization header, then whatever calls we make for that project in that session, it will be consistent across all the calls, right?
Yes, and until the token expires, it will be consistent.
Got it. Thank you.
Right? Maybe if you want, I can show one example to all of you how the token will come. And guys, feel free to ask any type of question because that's how it becomes more interactive. So I will say, so I'm going to the network tab and it is asking me a username and password. I'm logged in, so I'm getting answer here. See, in the request headers, you see there is an authorization header and it is using which algorithm? Basic, meaning this example I took is using basic authorization.
Username, password.
Yeah, and the username password is encoded and printed here. So this is how the authorization header looks like. You see, we are in request headers. Please observe things. Okay, we are in request headers. Authorization header is there.
So do response headers also have the authorization?
Which one?
The response headers?
No. Authorization is always from client to server, right? Not from server
Okay.
to client.
Yeah, just that one to clarify. Okay.
Yeah, because server has the response on the database. So the database will say that if you are authorized, only then I will provide you data.
Got it.
So Kiran,
Otherwise, server.
can I think server will authenticate it, right?
Correct.
So there will be nothing like authentication headers like that, right?
No. Okay. If your question is authorization versus authentication,
Authentication, yeah.
there is a subtle difference between again authentication and authorization process. But I'm not getting into that simple difference between authentication and authorization. All I'm trying to say is between client and server, who is requesting and who is responding. So client is requesting, server is responding. Who has to provide the details of username and password or token? Is it client or
Client.
server? The answer is client
Client.
only. And who has to validate it? Server has to validate it. Okay, server only will validate it. Client is always at the giving side. And server will say, okay, I got it, so let me validate it. Any questions, guys, here?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I see a question from Karthik. So whatever I'm explaining now, Karthik, they are mandatory for API automation testing. They are important for performance testing as well. They're important for security testing as well. It's a whatever I'm teaching in client and server, it is something that all of us should know as a test engineer. And in API automation, it is mandatory to know. Okay, now we have completed 50% of client and server architecture discussion. Now let's talk about the rest of the things, what happens from server to client. So from server to client, you have something called response headers. Just like we have request headers, we also have response headers. So definition of response headers will be very same. So if I just copy this and paste it, if this is response headers, I will say it is the additional metadata sent by the server to the client along with server response. We know that server will send a response, but server says, I will also give additional information to the client along with my response body. Like when I went to the bank and said, hey, give me 1 crore home loan, the bank manager will say, Kiran, I'm sorry, your loan is rejected. That is the response. I will say, why? Then he will say reasons, right? Why the loan is rejected. Reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, reason 4. All those reasons are nothing but additional metadata, nothing but response headers. Or he might say, your loan is approved. Congratulations. I will say, wow, I never expected. And then he says, your loan is approved because reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. Nothing but again, you have additional metadata here. Nothing but your additional response headers. So in response headers also, you have similar headers like request headers. So here also you have connection header where server will tell whether it is still connected to client or disconnected. It will tell content type, meaning in which format the server is giving response to client. Then it will have cookies. If server is sending any cookies, it will have caching memory. If server is telling the client to store the response on the browser or Postman tool, caching will be used. Then server header will be there, which will talk about the name of the server that gave the response. Date talks about the date on which the response is coming, etc. So many other headers are also there, which we'll talk when you are looking at the projects. I'll repeat again. Connection header will tell whether client and server are still connected or not or disconnected. Again, it can have the value such as keep alive or close. If the value is keep alive, it means client and server are still connected. If the value is close, client and server are disconnected. Content type here will talk about in which format server is giving the data to client. So here the content type is talking about in which format client is giving to data, client is giving to server. But here we are talking about how server is giving the data to client. Then you have cookies. Like if server is sending no cookies, you will see something like no cookies as the value. If server is sending some cookie, the cookie name, the cookie expiry date, the cookie security details will be there here. Caching. Caching is the process where the server response will be stored temporarily by the browser for some X number of durations. If it has to store for, let's say, 1 hour, it will have something like maximum age 1. So that 1 means 1 hour. If it is 365, it means 365 hours. In case if the server says you should not store the response because it contains sensitive data, then it will say no cache, meaning don't store. It can also say private, or it can say maximum age is 0, which meaning don't store anything. Server header will tell what is the name of the server that gave this response. Date will talk about the date in which the response came from server. I'll give an example, and if you have questions, you can ask me later. But after the example, I'm in the network tab, and I'm typing a simple request. Let's say demoqa.com. And here I'm typing some dummy username guest. Click on login. And here you see the login request. So here you see response headers. You see connection value is keep alive. So server is telling client that even after giving a response to you, I'm still connected with you. I'm not disconnecting you. Content length means the size of the response body. Content type you see JSON. So server is telling that whatever response I gave you, I'm sending you in JSON format. Proof, come to the response tab. Here you see the response body is in JSON format. And date. When did I get this response? Thursday, 9th January, which is today. Server, which server is giving this response? A server with the name Nginx, and the version of the server is 1.17, and on which operating system it is present, Ubuntu operating system. So that information is there. Okay, so these are few of the response headers we have. Any questions, guys, here on the response headers, or it's clear?
So response headers will be much lesser than the request headers, Kiran?
No, there is nothing related to the count here. It can, sometimes response headers will be more than request. Sometimes opposite also will happen.
Kiran, like, so the response header, like it is given the response, like why should it be like the connection should be keep alive? I mean, it can close the connection, right? Like why should it like still have the connection keep alive?
See, if it closes the connection, the
Mm-hmm.
next request that you are going to make, again, you have to open the connection. Every time the connection has to open, it will consume a network bandwidth, and which will be some not so great experience for users.
I mean, if you are like giving a request again, so it will still open a new connection only, right? Like will it be like doing a connection in the existing connection itself? Like how that is differentiated?
Yeah, so if the connection is keep alive, the next
Mhm.
request the client is sending will reuse the existing connection. In that way, the request can go to the server very quick. And from a performance testing perspective, it is a good suggestion.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why, they say, but end of the day, the project requirement. But if you say what is
Mm-hmm.
a good standard, I will say keeping it alive is always good because that's the standard things people follow.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions that you guys have? Please feel free to ask. I'm okay to answer the questions.
Uh, I just have one question. I'm just
Mhm.
curious, like, are these the default headers for every request, or the list of the headers are gonna change depending on the request?
Yeah, definitely they will change from request to request, project to project, developer to developer, requirement to requirement. But whatever I'm writing on my document and whatever I'm teaching, whatever I'm showing now, they are common, like a content type, content length, accept header, server header. These are normal headers, everyday headers. You will definitely see them in every project.
Okay, so depending on the request, headers are gonna change, and we are responsible for testing all the headers, or
Not all of them. Which headers to be tested will be written in the requirement document, meaning the API document.
okay,
So when I'm teaching you the project, I will tell in the project as a developer what should we test, and I will tell you how to test also.
okay, depending on the SRS, we are gonna decide which part of it is being
Exactly.
tested. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Now, then we have something called status code or response code and response description, and that is the end of client and server architecture. Now, when I say response code, whenever the client sends a request to server, the response will come, and every time the response comes, the response will have a response code with it. Now, what is a response code? It is a 3-digit number that explains what happened to your request. So I'll say it is a 3-digit status code that reveals the status of client request, whether your request has passed or failed or something else. That is what response code will tell. Okay? So in the internet, the range of these response codes is, it starts from 100 and it goes all the way until 599, meaning you have close to 500 response codes. As a test engineer, you should remember all these 500 response codes, but definitely impossible for you or for me to remember. So I'm going to help you to break it into 5 classes. So any response code that falls between this number will be called as informational responses. Any code that falls in this range, 200 to 299, we call it as successful responses. Anything that falls between 300 to 399, we call it as redirectional responses. Anything that falls between 400 to 499, we call it as client-side errors. And 500 to 599, we call it as server-side errors. These 5 things we have to remember for sure. So when you're doing API testing, your response code will be some number between 100 to 599. Accordingly, we have to be quick enough to say our request failed or passed or redirected or client error or server error. So when I say 500 to 599 server side errors, meaning your request is submitted to server, but server said that I am experiencing some difficulty, so I cannot execute your request. It is my problem, and the error will be a number between 500 to 599. So here server is taking the blame that I cannot execute your request because it is down. 400 to 499 mean it is an error coming from the client side, meaning whatever request you created and submitted, the request itself is incorrect. Maybe you forgot the username to enter or password to enter, or incorrect username, incorrect password, or credit card number incorrect, or name incorrect. So any mistake you do in the request, the error will come from 400 to 499 series. And you have 200 to 299, meaning your request is successfully accepted by server and it gave you a response, which is like a success scenario. 100 to 199 means the initial stage where the request is still waiting to hit the server. Server tells that, okay, I'm still waiting for your request, or your request is in the pipeline, it is in the queuing process. So those initial stages of your request reaching the server and waiting in the queue is called informational stage. Redirection stage means server received the request, but server is busy. So server says, instead of making your request to wait, I will forward your request to another server who can answer you. So when the request is forwarded from one server to another server, it is called redirection. Just like, you wanted to learn API testing. Did you approach me directly? No, you approached Isha. and Isha redirected you to Kiran. So that's a redirection like that. So these response codes are very important for us to remember because that is the essence of API testing. So you have 1xx family, 2xx family, 3xx, 4xx, 5xx. 1xx means 100 to 199, which we call it as informational responses. 2xx means 200 to 299, which is successful responses. 3xx is redirectional responses. 4xx means client side errors. 5xx means server side errors. Okay, that is nothing but response codes, and the messages I'm writing is response description. So once you know all this information, that is when you say you are aware of client and server architecture. In our entire API automation training, this diagram will play a very important role. Because if you don't understand this diagram and what I taught yesterday and today, API automation becomes useless, irrespective of any trainer teaching you or any tool that you are using. Okay, over to you guys. Any questions on client and server architecture? Am I clear? If there are no questions, please confirm.
Yeah, Kiran, I have a question on the server side. So as you mentioned that if a request is not served by one server and the server can redirect to another server, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that decided by that server, or is there any other mechanism where the request goes to the other server?
Typically, there is a guy called a load balancer. When the request is sent by client, the request goes to a server, which we call it as load balancer. And the load balancer decides which server is currently available for free, which can take the incoming request. So load balancer decides where that request should go. And that itself becomes a redirection. Just like you have a traffic constable on the road who decides, whether you should move from left to right or right to left, or which guy should move forward. Yeah, and Karthik, the question that you asked, right? I'm giving a URL on the chat. Here, all the request headers are also explained. But don't worry, in my training, I will go deeper once we start practicals. Right now, it is theory and putting some, foundational stage for all you guys in the initial classes. Yeah. So, and the redirection question, I think I have answered, right? Load balancer takes a call to which server the request should be moved forward. Because load balancer is like a guy who knows which server is already busy and which servers are available. So according to that information, load balancer will forward your request.
Okay. One more on the server side again, Kiran. Will these servers will be on a multi-threading environment as a type of structure? Because there will be many servers and we send some requests. Is that which server is free will be taking our request on a multi-threading concept like?
See, multi-threading concept is all about one server executing multiple processes, or one server doing parallel execution of multiple requests.
Okay.
When that multi-threading itself is overburdened, that's when redirection happens. Let's say, there is a server, there is one server, and the server says, I'm multi-threading enabled and I can handle 100 requests at a time. So as long as it is serving currently 90 requests, it can still accept 10 more requests. But let's say that server is so busy that it is already handling 100 requests. Now you send another request. That server cannot handle it because it is already busy with 100 requests. That's when redirection happens to another server.
And that is done by the load balancer.
Yeah, typically load balancer takes care of it. That server name is load balancer.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Okay, guys. So with this, we have completed client and server architecture discussion. And in tomorrow's class, we'll talk about 3-tier architecture model, where I'll explain front end, back end, and database. With that, our chapter 1 will be completed. And if you are happy with the conversations, with the kind of teaching style, and if you have not yet enrolled, please feel free to go ahead to Isha team, talk to them, and get your enrollments completed.
I
If you
just
have any
have one
questions,
question.
yeah, please
Sorry.
go ahead.
Where exactly are we seeing this server response numbers, which you have just mentioned?
Okay, in the network tab only. So if you right click, inspect network tab. See, when you click on any request, right? Let's say, I'm typing, I'm opening this website to demoqa.com. And when I'm logging in, whether I'm logging in with invalid username or valid username, when I click login, the request is generated here, right? You see here, status is shown 200.
Okay.
And if you click also, you will see under general tab, status code, you see? So it is 200. 200 means it falls under 2xx, right? So it's a
Yes, that's.
successful response.
Sorry, I might have missed it. Thank you.
Yeah. We will talk more about the status codes, request headers, response headers while doing practical testing also. For chapter 1, whatever I think I should explain to make it little easier and comfortable, we have done. But we'll go much more deeper once we go there.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. I'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you very much for your time. Good night.
Thank you.